Components work like empty templates. We place them on the stage to create the framework, and then we fill them with stuff. Then we make settings that determine how the component will behave, and these settings are component parameters. To control component parameters, we use the Parameters panel and the Component Inspector panel. Let's open these now. The Parameters panel is down here, and the Component Inspector is under the Window menu. Of course, we're going to need a component to work on, so let's also open the Components panel while we're here. The component we're going to use as an example is the text area component. This is a good one to start with because it's fairly simple and easy to understand, and it has some very common uses. It's primarily used for input text, say for example a comments box in a feedback form. In the Components panel, locate the text area component under the User Interface category and drag it onto the stage. Notice that it's automatically added to the document library, and we see an instance here. Now select it and look in both the Parameters panel and the Parameters tab of the Component Inspector. The Parameters panel contains the most common simple parameters that we're most likely to want to change. The Component Inspector lets us go a bit further into it to change a few more advanced settings. Let's have a look at just a few of these parameters now, starting with the Editable parameter. This allows the viewer to change the contents of the text area at runtime, i.e., drop their comments in the box. Of course, we could always turn this off if we didn't want to listen to anything our viewers had to say, or if we wanted this text area to display just text of our choosing. HTML allows us to use HTML tags for formatting. Use this to change the font and font styles, etc. Text is the actual text that we want displayed in the text area when it first starts up. So I'm going to drop some text in here. As soon as I click away, it's displayed. While we're here, why not add a HTML tag? I'm going to make this word bold. Okay, moving on. Word wrap, of course, determines whether our text will wrap to stay within the text area. Moving up to the Component Inspector, max characters can be used to restrict the amount of text that the user can input. Let's set this to say 400. And restrict will force the viewer to use only certain characters. Enabled determines whether the text area can receive user focus and input. The password parameter can make the viewer's input text hidden with asterisks, and visible will turn the visibility of our text area on and off. Finally, you may be tempted to think that minimum height and minimum width are used in order to set the height and width of our text area, but they're not. These properties are used by internal sizing routines and won't change the appearance of the text area at all. What will change it, though, is the Free Transform tool. Grab it and resize our text area. Notice that we can also set exact values in the Parameters panel, just like in the Properties panel. And because I've left the HTML setting to false, we can see our code there, but if I turn this true, now we see the result. Okay, let's test this movie and have a look at what it looks like. Control Test Movie. And here's our text area with the text we entered into the text parameter field. Because we set the editable parameter to true, we can also change this text if we like. I'm going to select all of it and copy it to the clipboard. I'm hitting Control C for this, or that's Command C on a Macintosh, and then I'll use Control V to paste it back in. You can see that a scroll bar appears when it's necessary. And as soon as we get to the number of characters that we specified in the max characters parameter, we can't put anything else in. So, there's just one example of how we set the parameters of our components. Now you can take this and apply it to any of the components you want to use in your movies. And that's it for component parameters. Let's move on to the next lesson.